We know of more than a dozen, including Chicago, New York City, Austin, Texas, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and San Francisco, California. The next speaker is Claire Chadwick. She helped Scott as he was immediately hit in the head with a police projectile.
Hello. Bear with me, I'm partially losing my voice. My name is Claire Chadwick, and I was with Scott in the protest on Tuesday.
My name is Claire Chadwick, and I was with Scott on the protest on Tuesday.
I don't personally know Scott, but we were band together in solidarity on the front lines of the protest. The police are saying that the protesters started it. And I can tell you that that's not true. There was nothing to provoke the police when they started tear gassing their citizens. When the first tear gassing happened, everyone ran. I looked around, and I was the only one there. I took a picture of the tear gas to document what had happened. I looked down to my left and saw Scott laying on the ground not moving. I immediately ran to him and turned him over. He was bleeding from the mouth. His eyes were rolling in the back of his head. I screamed to the police for medical assistance. They did not give it to me. To Scott, rather. Instead, 10 or so people came to help me carry Scott to safety. Away from all of the tear gas and all of the danger. We were all shouting for medical assistance. And instead of giving us that, there was a flash grenade thrown into the crowd. I am in shock that that is how the events played out. But I am honored that I had the opportunity to stand next to veterans like Josh and Scott, some of the most peaceful protesters, and fight for a cause that I believe in.
The next speaker that we have is Keith Shannon. Scott's best friend. And fellow Marine Corps veteran. Who served in Iraq with him.
Good evening, everyone. 6 years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Scott Olsen. A few months after meeting him, we found ourselves in Iraq. 10 months later, we were back in the United States. with greatly different views on what was really happening. Scott Olsen is a perfect example of someone who cares for everyone, even in a situation that doesn't directly affect himself. Scott Olsen is currently employed. However, over the last 3 weeks, he has been spending every night and weekend with the San Francisco Occupy movement.
Next up, we have Adele Marjoram, who is a civilian soldier ally of Iraq Veterans Against the War, and spent the entire night in the hospital, helping out and supporting Scott Olsen and friends and family.
I want to thank the people who got Scott out of danger and brought him to the hospital on Tuesday night. I can't express to you the devastation and the outrage that I felt seeing this young man, our friend, laying in the hospital with a fractured skull and brain hemorrhaging Tuesday night. And that he had to undertake this kind of risk to participate in a peaceful protest after returning home from two tours in Iraq safely. I want to let people know that this is not the first incident of police violence in Oakland. Police accountability does not begin and end with holding Oakland responsible for what has happened to Scott. I hope that as we do that, that we also stand in solidarity with other communities in Oakland who experience egregious police violence. I also want to tell you that as I stood there by Scott's side Tuesday night, that I had deep respect for why he put himself out there. That after returning from two tours in Iraq, that he came back with the sense that real peace and real security will be achieved by standing up for a just economy and a more equitable distribution of power in the U.S. and the world. Scott was active in organization building with Iraq Veterans
Against the War and Veterans for Peace.
With the Rock Veterans Against the War and Veterans for Peace.
And campaign building.
And campaign building.
With the campaign to stop the deployment of traumatized troops.
With the campaign to stop the deployment of traumatized troops.
And he believed that it was important. He believes that it's important.
He believes that it's important.
To be out having this direct democratic engagement that we're having here.
To be out having this direct democratic engagement that we're having here.
That is why he was out Tuesday night.
That is why he was out Tuesday night.
I just want to close by asking people to take care of each other.
To take care of each other.
To build a movement where we look after one another.
To build a movement where we look after one another.
As protesters did for Scott Tuesday night.
As protesters did for Scott Tuesday night.
Thank you.